What you guys got a video request from Peter and Frank wanting to know which Windows services are safe to disable. Well, that being said, let's get to it and we'll take a look at some of the services that you can disable inside Windows 11. So first go to your search and type services, and this will open up the services panel. Now there's going to be quite a few services that you're going to need, but the first one you're definitely not going to need is Connect User Experiences and Telemetry. This is Microsoft's service for collecting and harvesting telemetry from your computer. So double click on it, and what we're going to do is stop the service first by clicking stop, and this will stop the service, and then you can change this to disable. This means that service will be permanently disabled and it won't start. Now another question I get is it safe to disable services like, say, parent control? Well, if you're not using it and it's set to manual, it's not going to be started and it's not going to be running unless you actually start that service. So disabling these services is pointless because it's not running. But SysMain is another common one that people like to disable. So double click on it and click stop. Now what SysMain is to do with Superfetch. This service will try and load frequently used programs into memory, which can improve performance. Some people like to leave this alone, but if you're one of those people that like to disable it, that's where you do it. Windows inside a program, again, this is set to manual, so it's not going to be running. Any manual service will not be running until you go there and click on it and start to set it up, and then it will start to run automatically. If you're not using it, you can disable it like this, but it's not going to make much difference because it wasn't running in the first place. So only services that are running are going to impact the system. So I see a lot of people disabling stuff that's already set to manual, and it's not really going to do you much good by disabling it. So let's move on to some of the ones that are running, which we can disable. Now, there's another one right here which we can look at, which is this one here. And you can see it's already set to disable, which is routing and remote access, remote registry. These are common ones that used to be enabled, but now are disabled by default. Now, if you do find ones inside here that are running and you don't need them, then you might be thinking that I can just disable them, but you just can't, because sometimes Windows will need these services. And if you go disabling them when your system needs them, it can make the system unstable. So be very, very careful on what you're just clicking on and disabling. And just so you know, there's not a vast amount of services that you need to turn off nowadays, because most of them are turned off. Now, this one here, Windows Search, it is a bit of a resource hog, and it can put wear and tear on an SSD, and so can SysMain. So stopping this service and disabling these can help with wear and tear on an SSD. But also it does have a bit of an impact because you lose Windows Search. But if you do want to stop it and disable it, that's how you can do it. It's pretty straightforward, and it does take up a fair bit of system resources. So let's take a look at some of the other ones that we can disable here. So let's go into Windows Error Reporting Service. This is another one people like to disable. But as you can see, it's already set to manual triggered start, which means it's not going to be running constantly on the system. So disabling this is not really going to make much difference. It just will stop it from working when it needs to work. So really, are you gaining much by disabling this service? I don't think you are, and I think it's just a little bit of people creating content just for the sake of it and disabling a bunch of services that are already set to manual. So really, some of those videos are a bit old hat nowadays. Another one people like disabling is this one here, which is the Disputed Link Tracking Client, DLTC for short. This service is generally considered safe if you understand the purpose and potential consequences by disabling it. It's primarily responsible for maintaining links between files, especially across different locations and network shares. So if you've got all of that going on your local network, then probably leave this alone. Another one is Download Maps Manager right here. Again, it's set to automatic, and you can click disable, but you won't gain anything from it because it was set to manual and it's not running. It's only those running state processes that are hogging the system. So let's move on to some other ones which you can look at here. You can see BitLocker. Again, it's not running, but on Windows 11, when you do a fresh install, by default, that will start running and encrypting the drive. If you don't want that to happen, you want to disable BitLocker, I don't use BitLocker, and I think a lot of people will turn it on and cause themselves a lot of problems if they try to do data recovery in the future, or even transferring files. If the PC won't boot, if it's encrypted, it's not going to be possible to open those files and look at them if you don't decrypt the drive at first. So let's take a look at some other ones that we might have here. So we do have, this one is diagnostic policy service. This is safe to disable. It may prevent some diagnostic features from working correctly, but it won't cause any significant issues for most users. So you can disable that and stop that service from running. Now, another one that people like to disable is file history service. If you don't use it, you can disable it. But as you can see here, it's set to manual triggered state, which means it's not going to be running and you're not going to benefit by disabling this. Whereas many videos I've seen talk about disabling all of these when they're even set to manual, and it's just not going to impact the system whatsoever. So it's pointless disabling those particular features if you're not using them. If you are going to be using it and it is running, then by all means disable it. Now, print spooler is running and it can save a lot of resources if you don't have a printer. If you do have a printer, then leave it well alone. Don't touch it. So we're going to stop that service and disable it because we're assuming that you don't have a printer. But if you do, then leave it. Otherwise, your printer will not work properly. And if we're disabling the print spooler, we may as well disable this one right here, which is to do with the Windows image, which is to do with scanners. So you can double click on this and you can disable this. It is set to manual, which means it's not going to be running. But if you plugged in a printer to that network, it would then not work because we've disabled it. So bear that in mind. If you have a printer and scanner and you want that to work properly, then don't disable it. All of these Xbox ones here, they're all set to manual, and some of them are set to manual triggered. So disabling these are not going to benefit you whatsoever because they're not running, as you can see right here. And then you've got all the Hyper-V stuff. If you don't use virtual machine and stuff like that, you can disable these. But again, these are all set to manual, so it's not going to benefit that much really. Now, if you have an antivirus program installed on your computer, then you can disable Windows Defender because you have no use for Windows Defender if you already have another antivirus in. Now, sometimes it will disable the actual antivirus itself, but it will leave the services running. And as you can see right here, it's disabled it and you can't click on it and edit it because it's already been disabled by the antivirus. But if you check your services, you'll find that the actual service is still running in the background. And we can take a look at it right here. Let's go down to Windows Defender here, and you will see that Windows Defender Firewall is actually running on the system, even though we do have a antivirus firewall running, and you can't do anything about it because it's all grayed out. But what you can do if you have the Pro version, or you can edit the registry, but the Pro version gives you Group Policy Editor, and you can go to Windows Defender Antivirus right here, and then basically you can enable this feature. Enabling will disable the feature. So you can see if you disable this policy, Microsoft Defender Antivirus will run regardless. If you put it to enable, it will stop it, and that's what you need to do here, and it will stop that from running in the background, and hopefully that will give you a bit of resources back on your system. And there is a few other ones like Windows event logs, and you can see Windows Mobile hotspot service. This is all set to manual by default, so it's not much point in disabling those because they're not going to be running. So what we need to do now is restart the system, and hopefully once we've restarted the system, we get back to the desktop and the system should have a few more system resources available because you stopped some services that you're not needing anymore. Now, there's quite a few other ones that you can go through and turn off, but again, some of these are on the riskier side of things like Bluetooth, and even Print Spooler is a bit of a risky one to tell people to disable because some people don't listen and they just go ahead and disable it, and maybe English is not their native language and they're just following the video, and they then go and disable it and their printer then doesn't work. So just bear that in mind when you're going into the services area and disabling certain services. Without that service running, that piece of hardware is not going to work properly. And as you will notice, a lot of the services are already set to manual, which means there's not much point in going too crazy in there because a lot of them are not running. Anyway, with that said, my name has been Brian from BritecComputers.co.uk. Big shout out to my YouTube members. I appreciate the support. Have a lovely weekend. and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.